Hello and welcome. So my name is Abigail Lomeli, and today's mini lesson introduces students to synonyms and antonyms while encouraging them to make cross-linguistic comparisons between English and Spanish. This lesson supports vocabulary development, grammar, and metalinguistic awareness. So the title for my lesson is Word Twins and Opposites, Exploring Synonyms and Antonyms Across Languages. So this activity directly supports two ELAR standards for third grade. One focuses on vocabulary development through the use of context within and beyond a sentence to determine the meaning of unfamiliar words. The students will also use synonyms and antonyms to clarify the meaning of words. So a lot of the times, synonyms and antonyms and words, we use our context clues when it comes to reading. We have to say, oh, what is another meaning for happy? Oh, sad. I mean, not sad, glad or ecstatic, so we use our context clues. We also have to use a lot of the time the pictures so that we can tell what the word means. This lesson supports vocabulary development, reading comprehension, and grammatical accuracy. Students will analyze how both English and Spanish use word relationships to express similar and opposite meanings. So we have semantics, which is the word meanings, morphology, which is our affixes. An example is un, in, and des, and syntax, which is the use of context. So the instructional goals. So these instructional goals will guide the entire lesson. We're going to aim to deepen understanding of word meaning and usage in both English and Spanish, while validating students' bilingual abilities. So the one of their first goal is to identify and define synonyms and antonyms in English and in Spanish. The second goal is to develop metalinguistic awareness through word comparison. The third one is to expand vocabulary by recognizing words relationships. And the fourth one is to promote cross-linguistic transfers and bilingual identity. This is something that's done in majority of the districts here in El Paso is the fundamental five, where we have to know what the students will be doing and what as a class will be doing and what the students will be doing. So that's where our goals come into place. So what is a synonym and what is an antonym? Okay, so a synonym is a word that means the same. For example, happy, glad, right? Another synonym can be mad, angry. Another synonym can be little and short, right? Another synonym can be, what's another good synonym? Cold, freezing, right? Now, what is an antonym? A word that means the opposite, right? Cold, hot, tall, short, right? Um, this is an activity that my students, when I was just teaching in the classroom in third grade, my students always had a fun time finding synonyms and antonyms. This is when we would use a dictionary a lot and they would be hands-on. And for my bilingual students, it would be the same thing. They'd be able to make the translation, or not the translation, but they'd be able to find them and they'd be able to grasp the concept of it. So, un sinónimo y un antónimo. Okay. Synonyms often have more words that mean the same thing. For example, we see here we have glad that can mean happy, can be delighted, can mean joyful, can be overjoyed, pleased, contented. And I was always telling I would always tell my students when they were writing something, I don't want you to use the word happy. Go find me another word for happy when they'd have to write something. Don't use the word happy or don't use the word mad. Go find another word to use it. And this is the way that they would build their vocabulary. So right here, how we can start off the lesson. So we can start off the lesson by saying we're gonna ask the students, do you remember yesterday how we were covering synonyms and antonyms? Yes, 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 I remember. I'm like, okay, so what is a synonym? And then it's like, okay, talk to a partner, talk to your shoulder partner, what a synonym is. And then they talk to the shoulder partner. Okay, what is an antonym? Talk to your face partner, what an antonym is. And then they talk about what their partners. Okay, now we'd get back into a whole group and say, okay, what's a synonym? And then they tell me what a synonym. And then, okay, what's an antonym? Okay, and then they tell me what an antonym is. And then I'd give them, it's a way of giving a quick practice, giving them a card, and I'd give them a card, and I'd say, find a synonym for big, and they'd go and they'd find a synonym for big, and they'd bring me back a list. Go find a synonym for fast, and then they'd go and they'd find it, and then bring me back a list. Nice. And this one I would do actually with I'd tell them, okay, go find a synonym for big and go find a partner to tell you a synonym for big. And then they'd go and then they'd ask like several different, okay, no, that one I was already said, that one's already said, that one's already said. And the same thing for antonym, right? So with my bilingual students, I would use a lot of visuals. All right. If they couldn't find it, they'd bring me back a lot of visuals on what they were doing. But they always had a lot of fun. This one was always very interactive with partners. Now we have now if we're gonna do this with when we do this with our Spanish, we're going to show examples of the common synonyms and antonyms that are used that are in Spanish. We're going to encourage students to make predictions and to find similarities. We're also going to have the students use their home language when it's applicable to validate diverse and linguistic backgrounds. So grande, enorme, which is big and huge. Frío, caliente, cold and hot, which is an antonym. And then we can ask them, do Spanish to clarify things and for them to understand, we'd ask them, do Spanish and English have synonyms and antonyms? Excuse me. Then they'd be like, yes, 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 I do. Yes, I do. Then of course, you're going to have your students that be like, no lo tienen. Okay. Then we'd ask another one, do they look or sound the same? Right. And they'd be like, see, or they'd be say no, So of course, we're going to have the students that get the correct answer, and then we're going to have the students that don't get the correct answer. The next thing that we can do with our class is to create an anchor chart, but we would create it together. So we would have a big sheet of paper, right? Those big post-its, and we'd have it up there. The title of my anchor chart would be Same and Opposites, and then English and Spanish words and the relationships, right? So, and I'd color code it, as you can see, I color coded it on here. So in English, my synonyms would be in green and my antonyms would be in red. And then on one side, I do a table, a three table, like a three T. And I'd have English, Spanish, and then what type it is. Then we do English. And of course, they're in third grade, I'd have them go up and write it. All right, so fast. And they do quick. They'd write down quick. They'd have to think about it. So maybe the word that they think about for fast wouldn't be quick. Then maybe it'd be rapid. Or maybe it'd be, what's another synonym for fast? Maybe it would be speed. I don't know, super speed, something like that. So that's what they would do and then for Spanish, they do the same thing, rápido, veloz, and then they write down that it's a synonym. Then, of course, we're going to have those students that don't understand, and then we explain to them and we tell them, and then we let them know. Then we would do the same thing for an antonym, sad and happy, and then triste y feliz, and that's an antonym. So we would do a long list of synonyms and a long list of antonyms. So after we're done with the anchor chart, we would do interactive activity, right? To get the students to stand up, to move, okay? And I like my students to be walking around and talking and all that. So I would distribute word cards in English and in Spanish, and then they'd have to find their partner that has their synonym or that has their antonym, you know? So then when they're done, when they finally found their partner, they would say, my word is blank. My partner's word is we are, and then they would say whether they were synonyms or whether they were antonyms. And they would continue doing this until they got the gist of it and they got the understanding of it. Or until everybody got to share what their word is and what their partner's word is. So a reflection that we can ask our students, we're going to use the following questions to have them think critically. We're going to encourage the students to reflect on what they learned and how language systems that they compare. And then the question that we're going to ask is, what do you notice about how English and Spanish express similar meanings, right? Then we're going to do both languages use prefixes to show opposites? Then we're also going to use which language feels more familiar when using synonyms and antonyms. Now, after we're done with the reflection, we've already done the activities, we're done with the reflections. Now, of course, our exit ticket, which is a form of an assessment, a very informal assessment to see who grasped the concept of synonyms and antonyms. And I love doing exit tickets as an assessment. That way I understand who grasped the concept, but it's also that the students don't see that as an assessment. They see that as oh, okay, it's time for me to share, right? So they go ahead and share and they let us know what is going on, if they understood it or if they don't. And it's not, and I feel it's more personable because they don't feel like they're like being attacked, like, oh my God, you're having a test. And then they get all antsy and all that. It's like, no, just write me down, you know? So of course, it's gonna check for their understanding, and then it's gonna help practice their translation, their vocabulary, and their long cross-linguistics transfers. So a pair of English synonyms. The students are gonna have to do a pair of English synonyms and their Spanish equivalents. All right, so this is where the cross-linguistic transfer is going on. And then a pair of English antonyms and their cross-linguistic and cross-linguistics and their Spanish equivalents. All right. So for an example, would be fast, quick, and then in Spanish would be rápido, veloz. That'd be for a synonym. And then hot, cold, caliente, frío. That'd be for an antonym. So this is a way of exploring the language connections, and it helps students grow as thinkers and confident bilinguals. And of course, this isn't extra works, it's actually powerful, purposeful literacy instruction. So why does this matter? Why this matters, benefits of cross-linguistics work. So it boosts their vocabulary, it increases comprehension and strengthens their bilingual identity, and it builds awareness of how language works. So cross-linguistics and synonyms. So we can use of cognates for synonyms. So let's begin with cognates. These are words that look and sound similar across languages because they share the same roots. For example, enorme in Spanish is enormous in English. By pairing synonyms that include cognates, students can start to see the natural bridges between the two languages. This not only supports comprehension, but also confidence and vocabulary expansion. So contrast to build antonyms across languages. So antonyms can also strengthen cross-linguistic connections. Think of a simpler pair like hot and cold, caliente and frío in Spanish. When students match opposites in both languages, they develop a deeper conceptual understanding. We can support this by providing visual anchors, sentence frames, and opportunities to explain these opposites in both languages. Another strategy is semantic mapping. So semantic mapping between languages. So we can be taking a core word like happy and branching out to synonyms like glad or joyful, and the equivalents in a student's home language like feliz, contento, or alegre. This shows how emotions or concepts are represented across languages. We can even go deeper by examining how word families form happy, happiness, unhappy, and feliz, felicidad, infeliz. This helps students understand morphology and root affix patterns in both languages. Now let's focus on word families, analyzing word families, so which are the groups of words that share the same root and have related meanings. This concept is especially helpful in cross-linguistic instructions because both English and many students' home languages like Spanish use affixes to form new words from roots. Encouraging metalinguistic awareness. So when we explicitly ask students to compare how words work in both languages, we're helping them become metalinguistic thinkers. We encourage them to ask questions like, what's the opposite in Spanish? Or does my language have a word like that? These questions build awareness of how language function is key for biliteracy development. So an instructional tip that can be used is anchor charts. They are a great way to visualize these connections. A simple anchor chart with an English word, its synonyms and antonyms, their Spanish equivalents, and example sentence can reinforce these concepts visually. You can add icons or illustrations for meaning support and let students contribute their own examples. So in summary, teaching synonyms and antonyms is not just a vocabulary building task. It's an opportunity to foster cross-linguistic transfer, reinforce cognates and contrast, and build students' confidence in both languages. This strategy is adaptable across grade levels and languages, and it supports biliteracy in a meaningful and engaging way. So thank you. These are the references that I did use. Thank you.